everyone with us today.
I'm pleased to be here. I need to say got it. Thank you. I am very pleased to be here, you all, and share with you a little bit about archaeology in Kentucky, the archaeology I've done in Kentucky, and then review some concepts and also ask for something more fun than just me being a talking head. I know that everybody's I'm hopeful that everybody's in a comfortable place or has access to items around them. I'm pretty confident that is true because archaeology is all around us. So I'm hopeful that what I've planned today will work in this remote context. If we were all in the room together, we would be pulling open bags and sorting through doohickey kits and things like that, but we'll try to do this remotely. So let me share my screen. There it is. Share. And then I want to slideshow. Well, from the beginning. Okay, you all. We're here to talk about archaeology because it's so cool. And then down in the bottom hand of the slide is the romance of archaeology. It's also so wet or so hot or so freezing or so cool. Archaeology is deeply interesting, but it's also incredibly tedious. 2 images there. So today I want to outline what I want to share with you. Wendy asked me to tell you how I got into archaeology and what it is I do. I really want to review just briefly the differences between archaeology and paleontology because your students think I know something about fossils. And I got nothing. I got nothing for you. You know, Mel may have talked about this too, but I gotta say it. Review fundamental concepts. When you use archaeology to teach inquiry, there are basic concepts that when you're comfortable with them, you can see how inquiry works with archaeology as archaeology. We'll do some archaeological inquiry. This would be the more fun part. I've got a few lesson plans pulled up and we'll just do a little tidbits here and there. And then we'll have some Q&A. All righty, so here we go. How did I get into archaeology and what is it that I do? You can see me in multiple contexts, in the field, in the lab, and at an educational event at KET. I became an archaeologist because of a book that my mother bought me when I was sick. It was called the Reader's Digest, Treasury for Young Readers, and in it was a story about Pompeii. Everybody knows about Pompeii. That's archaeology. That's classical archaeology. And when I was a kid, I didn't know the difference. But that is archaeology. And archaeologists talk about the Pompeii effect, where everything stops in a nanosecond because of this horrible situation, the volcanic eruption. You see images there, all of them linked to Pompeii. I was also interested in Egypt too. I became an archaeologist, got a degree in anthropology at the University of Delaware. I'm a Delaware native, and then came to Kentucky because I got a job, frankly, in Kentucky doing archaeological research in Jefferson County. And the archaeology, the Native American archaeology, well, the historic archaeology too, but I'm a person who studies Native American history through archaeology, was so fascinating that I went to grad school and I've just never looked back. It's just fascinating information on the landscape across this state, everywhere. Plowed fields, rock shelters, caves, floodplains. So as a research archaeologist, I'm out in the field doing the kinds of things that everyone thinks about when you think about archaeologists. Excavating, analyzing stuff, writing reports, curating materials, advocating for site protection and preservation. But I'm also a public archaeologist, and I came to this late. And partially that was because I felt guilty having so much fun at work. I didn't feel like I was doing any good for anybody. All the things we were learning about Native peoples in Kentucky, all across the state. I mean, I've done excavations and surveys and testings just everywhere here. But the technical reports we wrote were just for ourselves. And the presentations that we gave were to other archaeologists. And yet every time I went out in the field, of course, you're not incognito. I mean, you go out in Johnson County, Kentucky, and people are like, who are these archaeologists and what are they doing here? You know, you go down to Lincoln County and it's like, why are you here? What are you doing? Everyone's curious. Of course they are. They're interested in the discovery that is a large portion of archaeology, not only in the lab, I mean, not only in the field, but also in the lab too. So I was lucky enough to be working as an archaeologist when public archaeology began in American archaeology. And I found that I had found my niche. I no longer feel guilty doing the archaeological research that I do because I can come and talk to school groups. I can come and talk to teachers. I can work with museum folks. I can help develop lessons and lesson plans, a curriculum and videos. One of the things that I really enjoyed, and this was much later, much later as a public archaeologist, I teamed up with Linda Levstick at the University of Kentucky. She is, or was, she's emeritus now. She was a professor at UK's School of Education, and she was about curriculum and instruction. And her special research interest was how school kids learned about the past. And the kinds of research that we have done, I knew I had really turned a corner when I was leading the lab to go do a project with Linda, interviewing school kids that you can see here on the left. And someone asked me where I was going, and I said, I'm going out to a site. A school had become a site, a place to research, to understand how kids learned so that we could ensure that we developed curriculums and lesson plans that would really contribute to deep understanding of ancient peoples, modern peoples, the link between objects and culture and all of that. It's been a marvelous experience, and those are the kinds of things that I do. And why do I still do it? Now, some people might say, well, you know, probably she's no longer going out in the field. Au contraire. This summer in July and August, we were out in the field. Oh my gosh. Some of the days were really nice. Other days were really not nice. But the archaeology that we did and the things that we learned were amazing. We were in Bracken County. So why do I still do it? Because history is cool, because artifacts are interesting, because doing archaeology is like being a detective and you're always sort of off balance. You're like, what is this? And how is that? And how does that compare to stuff someplace else? And I don't understand. And you go and find and look and research. Working with archaeologists is really fun. They're all about drinking beer and all about Star Wars. They're all about science fiction. I don't know why it is, but we're all about it. And I also like archaeology. I like doing archaeology because it makes me think really hard, trying to do my best to interpret, based on my experience going to archaeological sites where ancient people lived, reading about how traditional peoples, either hunter-gatherers or gardeners or farmers, arrange themselves socially, politically, and economically, and use those analogs, either through anthropological research that other peoples have done, or through history or ethnohistory, to try to bring to life, to tell a story the best I can about these people who lived so long ago that no documents except archaeological sites and the objects they left behind record who they were and how they lived. Okay, so let me quickly review the differences between archaeology and paleontology. This is very important to me. I wish I had $1 for every time somebody asked me about a fossil. And when I told them I don't do fossils, they were crestfallen. But the difference, I think, and I've interrogated this, partially it's because paleontologists and archaeologists use some of the same techniques for collecting their data. But the data is different. Their research questions are different. So you see archaeology with people and objects people made, and you see paleontology as ancient animals whose bones have turned to stone. Look at all these lovely, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think fossils are deeply cool, but I can't tell you anything about the plants or those animals. Now, I will say, as a young person, I was all about dinosaurs. I was into dinosaurs where dinosaurs weren't cool. I've got to tell you, dinosaurs are cool. But archaeologists don't study dinosaurs, paleontologists do. Some people think I find gold. No, the only gold I find is the information about people who lived long ago. I find and study archaeological sites and artifacts, and what you can see here is a collage of objects, both from Native American history times, historical times. You see a privy, a circular privy on the bottom left-hand side, and an aerial view of an archaeological site in Mason County that colleagues of mine and I excavated at with the UK field schools for many years. Those dark stains, midden stain A, C, and B is underneath the ground cover, are successive circular villages of farming peoples who lived there beginning around 1200 AD and lasting to about 650 AD. So I'm a kind of anthropologist because I study objects to understand how people lived and who they were. And some of the lessons that we'll discuss later today are about focusing on objects, artifacts, the power of objects to tell us about people who lived long ago. I don't really study living people. I don't study fossils. It's objects. It's trash, people's trash. These are the other kinds of anthropologists that are a part of anthropological studies. Everybody's interested in humans everywhere and at all times. And it's the archaeologists who give the depth of time for anthropological research. So a paleontologist is somebody who's a kind of geologist and biologist rolled into one. You can see here that the paleontologists are excavating. They use similar tools, but their questions are different. They want to know how long ago the animals lived and something about their biology, what kind of environments they lived in, and that kind of thing. Plants and animals, not people. One thing I thought about as I was preparing for my presentation today was, when I go into a museum, a natural history museum, the only people I see in the dinosaur area are living people walking around looking at the dinosaurs. There's no people in the rooms where the dinosaurs are. It's just about animals and the bones that have turned to stone. I don't want you to think that archaeologists don't study animals. We do, but the animals that we study are the fragments of the animals that native peoples or Europeans or enslaved African Americans used as food and deposited. These bones aren't fossils. They haven't turned to stone. Okay. So the reason why archaeologists study artifacts is because we want to learn about how people lived long ago. And in doing that, we end up learning about ourselves as well. Ways to be human, the different ways to be human. These objects that archaeologists find are very compelling to school kids. Frankly, they're compelling to everyone. If you look around where you're sitting right now, you are in an archaeological site. You are surrounded by artifacts, anything made or modified by humans. In your school, there are multiple archaeological sites. because the kinds of things in the office are not the kinds of things that are in your classroom, which are not exactly the same kinds of things in the cafeteria, and certainly not the same things in the gym or in the library. Multiple kinds of places, spaces, different kinds of objects. And as an archaeologist, I am trained to appreciate place and objects in one place and try to understand those patterns and then share the best I can to figure out how people lived long ago. Okay, so let's review the fundamentals of Kentucky, of archaeological inquiry. These are the foundations, the fundamentals. In any context that you discuss archaeology, when you are exploring questions, any kind of inquiry that you're doing, you'll be attending to these fundamental concepts. What you see here in front of you is an aerial view from a drone. You've got to believe drones have made a difference in archaeological research. Wow. A drone picture of an excavation unit at the site that I was telling you about before, the one in Mason County, Fox Farm. And on the right-hand side is the map that we made of where the posts that we found. We have color-coded these posts because there are different overlapping houses that were erected here, some around 1375, others around 1450 in this particular place at that site. Okay. Fundamental concept, the past is important. It has relevance to our understanding of what it is to be human. I think a lot of people think history in school is boring, mainly because maybe it's just not taught in an exciting way. Because honestly, if you sit down and talk to anybody, they want to tell you about their parents and grandparents, their history, the history of their town. The past is important. It's physically manifest in our towns by the buildings and the objects left behind by people who used to live there long ago. We are lucky in a historic context that people write down things. They do city histories or county histories, or there are diaries and things. Imagine, though, when you don't have all of those documents and things, it's objects that help, the patterns of objects. And you can see a collage here of a variety of objects recovered from archaeological sites in the Green River Valley of Kentucky, 2000 BC. Culture is what archaeologists study. Archaeology is kind of a wacky thing, really. And I really thought it was sort of an academic thing that we talked about in my classroom, my college classrooms, until I went to get the color of my tassel for when I graduated. And they said, well, archaeology, well, is that an art or is that a humanity or a science? And I'm like, both. And they said, well, you got to pick one. You got to pick one color. I'll be honest with you. I did not pick science, because the process of doing archaeology, everybody is interested in, but it's the stories, it's the information that our research produces about people who lived long ago. That is why I do it. There are other archaeologists who are all about the science, and there's nothing wrong with that. Collaboration between the serious science archaeologists who are interested in all kinds of fancy techniques of analysis and so forth. All of this is woven together to tell the stories. But that's not me. I'm more about the humanities part, the cultural part, the stories part, the human part of ancient people who lived long ago. Here is an artist's illustration of a Kentucky village. What they think, based on the archaeological research, around AD 700. A circular village. Now, the villages that we looked at that village in Mason County, are also circular. So there's a deep history of circular villages in Kentucky long ago in Native history, and circular villages all over the world with plazas, houses arranged around it. Okay, it's the science methods, as I mentioned, that help us study these long ago cultures and understand about these people whose only written record are the archaeological sites they lived in and the objects they left behind. And it's not just long ago either, because I don't have to remind you that African American history is not well represented in our historical documents, in our history books. Neither is women's history, neither is children's history. The objects that are at archaeological sites from the 1870s, 1910s, provide us with understandings of how those people lived, the ones who do not appear in our history books very often. These scientific methods are observation and inference, the use of evidence to explain things, classification, and attributes. In this slide, you can see 3 different ways to organize a circular village based on archaeological research at a site in Pike County, Kentucky, Sloan, at a site in Harrison County, Kentucky, Florence, and a site in outside of Dayton, Ohio, called Sunwatch. The other slide you see, the other picture on this slide, you can see ancient and modern beans. In conversations with Bill Best, who studies and grows and sells Kentucky heirloom beans, he took a look at the beans that we collected from an archaeological site dating to about 1250 or 1350. And he said, well, the native peoples had the same beans as our heirloom beans. They just look different because they're burned. Grit beans, fall October beans, regular beans. And context, it's all about context. When you go into school, that's your context, and context is everything. The objects in the different places in your school give you a sense of what was going on in that place. Where did the artifacts come from? Where is the site located in space? Is it in Louisville, or is it in Pulaski County? Is it out in Ballard County, or is it in Warren County? The schools may look alike, but may be a little different depending on where the schools were built and when those schools were built. How old is the artifact? How old is the site? You can see the picture on the bottom right-hand corner. This is about context and change over time. This image, by the way, is in the Google Drive folder, linked to materials, artifacts that have been found at archaeological sites in Kentucky, and reflecting the Native American historical layers that we find at archaeological sites in Kentucky. Bottom to top, the oldest is at the bottom, the youngest is at the top. Archaeologists use this to relatively date what they found. And then overlapping footprints. Look at all those different houses. Now, I got to tell you, when we were excavating it, we didn't know. I mean, it was insane. I mean, there was nothing but posts everywhere. It was insane. It wasn't until we studied the size of the posts and the depth of the posts that we were able to tease out these different houses that were built one on top of the other over the course of about 400 years. Okay. Let's apply these concepts. In a teacher context, that would be, let's do an activity, boys and girls. In an archaeological context, we're going to consider a few lesson plans. We're going to be doing archaeology. And when I say we're going to be doing archaeology, what I mean is we're going to be doing archaeology. Archaeology is not just excavation. In fact, excavation is expensive It's time consuming. And the responsibilities for excavation are record the site, collect the artifacts, wash the artifacts, catalog the artifacts, analyze the artifacts, curate the artifacts, write a report, share that report. That's more than any school group can do. Now, if you want your students to experience archaeology, not a problem, because they can experience the archaeological investigation, inquiry, using objects and patterns of objects. And they're all in your classroom. They're all at your students' homes. I also want to say, I have to say this. This is the only picture of a girl archaeologist that I could find on the internet who didn't look like, I don't know, some kind of really sexy, skimpy, shirted person. That is not me, okay? Kind of old clothing and so forth and so on. This girl is closer, but her trowel is wrong. That trowel is a trowel that you would use if you were gardening. An archaeologist uses a Marshalltown 6-inch pointing trowel, one that bricklayers use. This is the whole, I guess I'm going to have to ask somebody to draw one that is really an appropriate woman archaeologist. Okay, so what I would like to do first is, okay, I can't hardly read what I've done. I go too far up with this screen sharing stuff. Okay, so that says archaeology, artifacts. Okay, we're going to analyze artifacts. Okay, right? All right, artifacts. You see artifacts here. And does my cursor show? Okay, okay, so here's a fragment of a Native American pot. Here's a part of Mr. Taylor's saponaceous shaving compound. What the heck? Legos and a pencil. These are all artifacts, anything made or modified by humans. One really easy, fascinating, wonderful way to engage your students in archaeology is to have them bring an object from home and explain why that object is important to them. What it does is, in their mind, it links people to object, the significance of objects, the functions of objects, and how we emotionally connect with objects. As I was getting ready to come to you guys today, okay, what time is it? I can't even see. Is it too late? What time is it? Hang on. I had a tendency to go on and on. Okay, great. Okay, good. I thought, well, I don't want to be morbid and have my father's dog tags. Let me see if I can come up with something else. I have not looked at this glass perfume bottle of my mother's. It's engraved with her initials for probably years. It has sit quietly on that shelf. If it weren't there, I would miss it, truly, even though I don't look at it that often. It's her. And I will tell you guys, as I was looking at it really closely, I don't know if you guys can notice the dust. I mean, just, hey, I thought I smelled something. Her perfume. It makes me cry to think this object is a sort of a physical manifestation of my mom, and the smell, there she is. Teachers have that same feeling about objects. Kids do too. It doesn't have to be, have to take a long time in your classroom period, but it can really set the stage for an archaeological inquiry. This artifact analysis sheet that you see here is a souped up version of, boys and girls, take out a sheet of paper, make it make it into 4 squares, draw it for me, describe it for me, explain it to me, analyze its meaning, and now we'll share out. You can do it as a single kid. You can do it with a group of kids. Little kids can do this. If they are not if they're not writing very well, they can just talk about it. Some kids will bring in the same things other kids do. I can imagine it at the beginning of school as a kind of icebreaker. But teachers always have ulterior motives with icebreakers, don't you know? Archaeology, objects, patterns of objects, significance of objects to people can be realized with something as simple as this. If you want to do something more, take a look at the activity, the lesson called The Archaeology of Me. This one's a little more involved, and I think it would be better for older kids. You ask kids, and honestly, it works really well if the kids don't know each other, but it's also going to work with small schools where the kids have gone to school together all their lives. They bring 12 artifacts. The teacher gives them a paper bag. They bring the paper bag back. All the paper bags look the same. Don't put your name on it. That's their archaeological site. And they are asked to fill out a lab form, just like archaeologists do. I don't think I have that on here, do I? No. Fill out a lab form. What's it made out of? Describe it. What's its shape? What's its size? And then the kids, of course, they don't have their own bag, interpret whose bag it is. It is brilliant because not only do people get stuff right, boy, howdy, do they get stuff wrong. Which also is one other thing, which is a limitation of archaeology, is if you don't have the personal experience or the research experience to know what options there are, you're not going to get it right. Or there's many explanations and you don't know which one is right. So here's a great one. Do you know the sex of the site owner? At this one experience we had, there was a razor in the bag. It was a pink razor. The student said, who did not have sisters, the person who made this bag up is a guy. You can imagine that all these high school girls were laughing hysterically. Yes, indeed, it was a razor. But no self-respecting guy was going to use a pink razor. This was a girl's razor. They didn't understand. They didn't have the experience to understand how this connected. So, using objects from your school, from your life, you don't have to excavate anything. The idea is the link between objects and patterns of objects to infer who lived there, how they lived there, why they lived there. Okay. Here is an activity called observation and inference. I don't know exactly how to do this remotely, so I'm just going to do the best I can here. This is an activity from Intrigue of the Past, and this lesson is in the Google Drive. Okay, so one of the things that archaeologists do is to look at objects and objects in context, observe, and then infer, drawing on their experience and talking to others and that kind of stuff. It's important to know when students are involved in an inquiry, they need to know the difference between an observation and an inference, because their work is going to be based on the evidence that they collect. And they have to be sure that that evidence is based on observations or supported by research so that they can make that inference and not just something that's kind of made up. One of the things that Linda Levstick and I discovered was that our use of the word story with students was a misuse of that word, because the kids looked at objects and told us a story. It was a great story, but it was a fictionalized creative writing story. Not bad as far as that goes, but we wanted them to tell us a story about what these objects meant using evidence and supported by evidence to tell a story. We don't use that term that way anymore. We make it quite clear that this is not creative writing. We're doing science here. We're doing history here. We have to have evidence to back up our statements. They get it. You know, kids are bright. They get it. It was us, our problem, using the wrong word. And we couldn't understand why we were coming up with ghost stories and just incredible, I don't know, X-Men and Avengers and things like that. It was like, what are you doing? And then we realized, oh, it's our fault. We don't need to be putting speed bumps in front of students, okay? There are enough of those. The words we use, we don't need to be doing that. Okay, so if you all would please take a look at the boy in the water, which may be an inference, because it could be a young girl who has short hair. Oh my gosh, I just noticed that. I've been doing these lessons for decades and I just noticed that. You guys, I can't believe it. Oh shoot. Okay, there are 16 questions. I'm only going to do the first few, okay? Taking a look. What do we see? We see a person in the water. Person. Oh my gosh, I'm going to share this with my friends. I can't believe this. Okay. And we have an event here, situation, a context. Okay. Observation or inference. The boy is in the water. Observation or inference. The weather is cold. The tree branch is broken. I feel like a math teacher. Show your work. If you know why it is or what it isn't, show your work, explain why. Observation and inference. If the boy crawled out of the water, the goat would butt him. The boy fell off the branch. A goat is standing by the pond. The branch will fall on the boy's head. Okay, you get the idea. You don't have to do the child in the water, the human in the water. There are multiple kinds of images that you could select. Things from historical images from your county histories, for example. You could use images from a newspaper or a website or what have you, and ensure that the students understand the difference between observation and inference, and why it's important to know the difference, and why and how the two work together. You can't have the inference without the observation, but you have to. There's a certain amount of things that you're going to have to infer here from what you see, and that in this case is a picture, but there's also an inference from the objects as well. I can infer that this was a perfume bottle because I can smell it. Is that inference? No. This is observation. I can smell her perfume, but if I hadn't opened it, how would I know it's a perfume bottle? You see what I'm saying? Okay. Now, let's try it now with an honest to gosh artifact from that Fox Farm site. And I'm just going to riff on this. As you see, we have 4 views of a decorated bear incisor. That is a fact. That is an observation. You can see 4 lines of drilled holes on one side of this bare incisor. It looks like it was broken. 2 drilled holes, one's broken at the top. I'm going to infer that. I know it's broken, but I'm going to assume that both of the second drill, the complete drilled hole, was there because they wanted to continue to suspend it around their neck or what have you. That's an inference. There is a human figure on the reverse side of this bare incisor. Yes, it is. This human figure is a depiction of Redhorn, an important hero in Native American religious belief in the eastern woodlands of North America. I don't know that that's a fact. That's my inference. I must do research to find out, A, if there are other bare incisors or other kinds of objects from this same time period that look like this, and what other people may have inferred. Does this image resemble stone pictures, petroglyphs, or painted pictures, pictographs, that indigenous peoples have told archaeologists or anthropologists that that's who that person is? Observation, there doesn't seem to be any kind of lines on that one side of it, unless that's an object, unless this is on purpose. I don't know. These, however, are purposeful. These lines here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe, and then lines up here. What are those lines? I have no clue. I might be able to figure it out by doing more research. Those are the kinds of challenges that archaeologists face when we have objects from ancient sites that aren't really within our own purview of ornamentation and so forth. Okay. There is such a great lesson. It's called Buttoning Up History. It's just really awesome. And I put this in the Google Drive. This is what archaeologists do when they analyze particular objects. We just pick buttons here, but they do that for ancient pottery, ancient stone tools, modern glass, all kinds of stuff. A web of button characteristics. And in fact, a web of button characteristics is one of the assignments that the students who are doing this lesson are required to do. So, characteristics of button design: size, shape, decorative technique, attachment. These are attributes, and we can classify objects according to their attributes. So, for example, I'm classifying this glass bottle of my mother's as a perfume bottle, partially because of the smell, but also by researching its shape, its size, and its closure. I know that it's from a certain time period and is a certain kind of thing that was commonly used in the 1920s. I don't know if you can tell here. Wait, where's the, no, that's better here. Okay, I don't know if you can tell here, but it's a screw top. That makes it a certain time period anyway. Previously, glass bottles had just corks or applied lips or all kinds of different things, blah, blah, blah. And it's the screw top that is a certain time period. So that is an attribute that can help me identify what it is of my mother's. Motif, color, condition, material. So for example, what we have, what is the material? Well, this is plastic. These are plastic buttons. How do I know that? Well, because I typed in to Google plastic button picture. So I know that. Okay, I'm cheating. It's not damaged. They're new. Bright colors, metallic, white or clear. Well, if it were me doing just these, I wouldn't say bright colors. I'd say green or red or white. Not surprisingly, these are characterized on that site as Christmas buttons. Are we surprised? Christmas colors. All right. Motif, uniformity, mold made, precision made, attached shank. When I looked at attachment, sure, they're all sew through, but come on. Some of them are 4 holes and some of them are 2. That's important, isn't it? Or is it? I don't know. That's part of the thing too in doing archaeology. You're not exactly sure the attributes are going to help you figure anything out, but by God, you're going to analyze them just right down to the very, 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 very smallest thing and then try to figure things out. I'm known as a splitter in analysis circles, not a lumper. And then finally, context stratigraphy, context chronology. Okay, so when I say privy, this is what I mean over here on the left-hand side. As an archaeologist, when I say privy, I mean the part that is the dotted lines here, the privy vault, where all of the human waste goes. Historic archaeologists love privies, old ones, not currently used ones, old ones. Here's an example of a privy. The lesson that this came from is called Strata in the Privy, I think. This is a privy that was excavated at 712 Dorothy Street in Lexington in the Davis Bottom neighborhood. And the Davis Bottom lessons through Project Archaeology Investigating Shelter. This is one of the activities. This is based on the archaeological research that was done there. And you can see that the original privy is here, 7 and 6. Then they dug it out, cleaned it out because people would do that. It became filled up with trash and then sealed up. That's that stratum 1. These words are very tiny and so forth, but the ages of the bottles and the things that were found in these various levels indicate the most recent cleaning out and filling up of this particular privy. Okay. Stratigraphy. The earliest is on the bottom here, most recent on the top there. The context, the chronology, is linked to the stratigraphy. The older things are on the bottom, the more recent things are on the top. Archaeologists look at the objects in this context and they can figure out when. But they can sometimes indicate these particular contexts are very important for historic archaeologists because they can infer the ethnicity of the people who used the privy and the socioeconomic status of the people who used it. Okay. I want to close by sharing this cosmic information. I don't know, you may have seen these posters. I don't know. They were printed in the 1980s, and it's been years since they were reprinted. They are now reprinted. Information in the research or resource guide tells you how to get these. Teachers can get one for free. They can order more. What you see here is changes in objects over time for Native American history, from the very earliest people to the most recent people before Europeans arrived. And this is the first time there's been a version colorized. So if you are interested in using these in your classroom, please, by all means, get in touch with the folks on that resource guide and get you some. There's also a teacher's guide that we are updating to go along with these posters. Okie dokie. And now, thank you very much. Do we have time for some questions? Not many, sorry. Okay, I'll stop my share. And sorry, I wanted to leave more time for that. sharing. I mean, you guys have been to work all day. It's time to get dinner ready. If anyone's got a question, let me know. I don't know, Wendy, are you monitoring the chat? I see it.
I didn't mean to mute you, Gwen. Sorry. I was trying to unmute myself. Yes, I am monitoring. I think I muted you. Sorry, Gwen. I am monitoring the chat. It looks like they are loving the posters. They're learning lots. And yeah, you can unmute yourself. I'm sorry, Gwen. I didn't mean to mute you.
Hey, Gwynn, I'm just going to jump in and say
Cool.
he mutes me all the time, so don't be offended by it. You just have to kind of let it go, because I'll be talking away, then it'll be like click, and it's over.
Yeah, but I
So,
mean to mute you. I did
I
not.
know that's what I said, but
It's all
anyway,
good.
I know yours was accident, but mine is purposefully every single time. So
Well, it's a good thing that it wasn't muted throughout the whole hour, right?
yeah, well,
No.
I'd have
Done
been muted
that.
long ago. That's why I
Yeah.
said 3:59. I kind of zipped it. So anyway, great job, Gwen.
They are
Great job.
loving, they're loving the great lesson ideas. I will say, while people are maybe thinking of something, I loved your definition of an artifact. Anything made or modified by humans. Like, I absolutely love that. I made that down. I wrote that
Good,
down.
good.
And I love the activity where students bring artifacts from home. I think you made several of us kind of weepy eyed.
Yeah.
But I'd never thought about incorporating archaeology into a back to school activity, but I
Mhm.
love that because we can learn so much about our students, but also because sometimes we use that as like a SEL activity or a back to school kind of getting to know, but man, to incorporate standards and incorporate archaeology into that, I love that.
Awesome.
It says a great fun, Friday fun activity. I just love everything about it. I knew you all were going to love this. And Gwynn has given us a plethora of resources. Jamie is right now, I think, as we speak, putting that into the Wakelet if she doesn't already have it up there. We will link that to the Wakelet so you all have access to all of that. I am also going to put Gwynn's email. Gwynn, is that okay if I link?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because
your
I wanted to let you all know that Project Archaeology, Intrigue of the Past, my book has been used and abused to a point that it's just, this is it. I mean, it's just hurt. But this, the series of lessons, the first 8 lessons in Intrigue of the Past are the ones that I was channeling here today. Intrigue the Past, you can still purchase it from Project Archaeology. These lessons are eminently clear. As I was preparing my presentation today, I realized that I have internalized so much of that curriculum. There are Kentuckyized lessons that we have done over the years because Intrigue of the Past is linked to Utah stuff. So there is a lesson in the Google Drive that is a Kentuckyized version of a lesson about making cordage, and it has a math connection and a cultural connection, a social studies connection. For those of you who teach in Kentucky's cave land, we have an entire series of lessons linked to, or sort of Kentuckyized from, the rock art activities in Intrigue of the Past that are connected to the petroglyphs and pictographs in Kentucky's caves, particularly of the cave in Warren County that has mud glyphs, one of very few caves in the Southeast. I'm really pleased to tell you that Shadeland House Modern Press is going to publish my picture book about a young boy who has to go into the cave by himself as part of a coming of age ceremony, which is linked to archaeological research at Kentucky's caves. It is hoped that it'll be available in 2025. And our idea is to prepare lessons linked to that book too. So there's that literacy link too. Those of you who have who teach 4th and 5th grade, a book that I wrote for adults learning to read called Kentuckians Before Boone, written at a 6th grade level, connects stories to the archaeological work that's been done to understand native farming peoples. The archaeological site I drew from was the Fox Farm site, the one that we went to with the Kentucky University of Kentucky students, but I had worked on that site many years before. The idea was for adults learning to read to be able to read something more engaging than, you know, the tax books. So this one is published by the Kentucky University Press of Kentucky. I've gone into classrooms and shared it with 4th graders, and they actually think that the native peoples in that story are alive. You can't get any better than that as an author for kids for that. So there are literacy tie-ins along with your history, geography, math, and science, social studies. They're out there. The Kentucky Archaeological Survey's website has a lot of stuff for you to access to. So we're here for you. The stories that Kentucky's archaeological sites hold are fascinating, and Kentuckians love to know about Kentucky.
And I would truly just echo that. Reach out to Gwynn. She truly does mean she is here for you. She's here as a resource, as is the Archaeological Society. So please reach out to her if this is something that is of interest to you, your students. You can see what a wealth of resources she is. And once you get on the Wakelet that Jamie, the Google Drive is amazing. I was looking at it last night when she was sending me that, and I was like, our teachers are going to love this. So thank you so much.
I can't believe I forgot to put this one thing on the resource guide. Okay. At the Kentucky Museum in Bowling Green on the Western Kentucky campus where KAS is, there's an entire exhibit on a farming village excavated in Warren County with murals depicting lifeways of those farming peoples in Warren County. And the site is 20 minutes from Bowling Green. I would love to come in to Warren County schools or any schools around the Warren County area and talk about this site. It's fascinating information.
Well, thank you so very much. We can't wait to see what is next, and can't wait to see lessons being taught in schools. So, Gwynn, as always, it's a sheer pleasure. We appreciate you so very much. Thank you so very much. You all have an awesome evening.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for teaching.
Thank you, Gwynn.
Bye, guys.